I'll call to order the Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee for March. As is our usual way of doing business, we will take the consent agenda first. I would like to see a show of hands of any of the following addresses that have someone here who wishes to speak. First of all, 705 Chatham Road, I gather, has been left until next month because the Historic Resources Commission did not get to review that item. So it will be in April that we take up 705 Chatham.
No one sent me a letter or anything.
Well, I think that happened just today, that they realized.
I tried from Asheville down here just for this meeting. The call would have been nice.
Could he come to the mic?
Yeah, if you'll come tell us.
I got two letters. The first letter mentioned the meeting time as 6:30. The second letter mentioned the meeting time as 4:30. I drove down from Asheboro just specifically for this meeting, and I'm a physician. You know, I bought this property as an investment, and asking me to come back next month, I don't know.
If you would like to take several minutes right now to address the committee, even though we will not be taking this up because it is of interest to the Historic Resources Committee.
Maybe I should come back then.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay. Do I have people here about 66 West End Boulevard? That's Ms. Strong and Mr. Giroux. Is that correct?
Leslie Fry.
Oh, Leslie Fry.
Appears for Mr. Giroux. He's on his way up here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. For 305 Polo Road. That's the one that's removed. Yes, of course. Okay. 820 Ferndale. Nope. Okay. The 5514 Pine View Drive item. No. Okay. All right. Except for then the ones that have been removed, which is C1A and C2A, and then the 66 West End Boulevard, which is C1B. May I have a motion on the remainder?
May we pull C2B, please?
2B. Okay. All right. Very good. May I have any other items in? Yes.
C9, I would ask to be pulled, and I would just remind the committee that on items C5 and C6, which were taken up yesterday in finance, that both of those were forwarded with no recommendation from finance.
That's right. Does anyone on the committee wish to go over those items some more, or just accept finance committee's recommendation or no recommendation? Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
But I do have a question, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Could you please recap the housing numbers or locations again as to what has been pulled and what is it that they were going to continue with once we vote on the agenda?
Okay. The 705 Chatham Road Apartments, this is C1A, has been, that's going to be in April. Okay. The 66 West End Boulevard, C1B, we will take up separately because there are people who wish to address that. C2A on Polo Road has been removed from the agenda, and Councilmember Bessie wants C2B pulled to address separately. And C3 will be considered. There's no one here.
Thank you.
I have a motion on the remaining, except for C9 and then the C1B and C2B.
I move approval of the remaining consent agenda with the understanding that C5 and C6 are moving forward with no recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's start, Mr. Bailiff, with the C1B, which is 66 West End Boulevard.
Chairman Lott, members of the committee, C1B is referenced by Housing File 2006020470. The property address is 66 West End Boulevard. Property owners are Penny L. Strong and Stanley J. Giroux. The property meets consideration for demolition under the minimum housing code. The estimated cost of repairs are total less than 50%. The estimated cost of repairs is $9,734. The fair market value is $109,000. Based on the information, it is recommended that an ordinance be adopted to cause this dwelling to be repaired or demolished within 90 days. I have some pictures that I would like for you to see based upon when the case was first started, when there was shortly after a fire. These are dated, these are from 2006. This one may be a little bit dark. This is of the ceiling in the room where the fire occurred. And I also have some pictures that were made on March the 3rd. Ms. Strom allowed us access to the property so that we could see the interior of the structure. So these will be from March the 3rd of this year. I'll stop there and be glad to answer any questions. I've got about 70-some pictures, so I think you'll see the basic condition of the property, if you will.
Are there any questions of Mr. Bailey?
Just a clarification. Mr. Bailiff, you said that apparently this property came under the inspection or the process starting in 2006?
Yes, ma'am.
And when we did this in 2006, I know we have the code deficiencies in here today, but do we have one, is this from 2006, these code deficiencies, or is it from the most recent 2014.
The deficiencies are from 2006.
Okay. And my question would be, if we had one from 2006, and we're again bringing this forward, and this came through the same process in 2006, or? Okay.
It's already been to committee one time.
Okay. So when we do this, do we not submit another code deficiency? I mean, do we go out and inspect again, or do we just rely on that first investigation?
We rely on the first investigation and the property owner to keep us apprised of the condition of the property. It has been boarded and secured for some time, and because this was coming up again, I contacted the property owners and asked that we be able to enter upon the property and see what the interior condition was. Again, it has been secured, and so we couldn't just walk in, so to speak.
And I guess just like I always ask of our staff and of the body, how is it that a property that was in 2006 and it's 2014, and we're talking 8 years here, really? Are we not about 7 to 8 years of trying to get it to compliance or something to that effect?
When it first came to committee ruled in favor of a 365-day period, in which case it was hoped that the property would be able to be acquired by someone else that would take the property. The fire had occurred under the previous owners, not the current owners. And then this property sold in May of 2009, and the current owners have had it since then. We have communicated periodically with HRC staff, but the context has been that we've not been able to get in for a review or a reinspection, if you will, until recently.
Yeah. When it comes to HRC and their process and how we operate, how is it that in our process we can mark properties as non-compliant, but then it's like we wait on the HRC once we submit or somebody submits some paperwork to ask for an extension? And I don't understand how we can put this type of labor into these properties based on our process, and then we have an organization that can come and ask for 365 more days for a property. I don't understand that, and it's not you. It's just that something is wrong here to me, because I've been doing this now going on 5 years, and I know Councilmember Light, Councilmember Bessie's been here longer, but it seems to me that there is something wrong there. That I got a property that we noted in compliance, non-compliance in 06, new buyer or whoever in 09, it's still, that was 8 years, 9 from 14 is 5 years. You guys help me with the math here. You know, I'm old school. I can kind of cipher in my head. But now I saw this letter saying that they, based on the general statute, am I right? This is a general statute. They can ask us for 365 more days when 365 was asked for already?
Yes, ma'am.
Seems like a shell game to me, Mr. Bailiff. I'm done, Councilmember Light. Just seems like a shell game.
Okay, thank you. Jack.
This is not so much a question, but a little clarification on the timing of this. In 2008, Councilmember Marshall called me and asked me if I would aid in getting this property, which had burned in 2006, to see if I could find any way to get it out of the hands of the lender, who was Countrywide Mortgage. I spent about 6 months finally contacting the previous owner, who had not made a mortgage payment in 3 years, who said, I don't have anything to do with this house anymore. I don't know why the bank is not foreclosed. I eventually got his permission to talk to the lender. The lender did, at that point, decide to foreclose. At that point, my understanding of the way the housing system works is that when a new owner takes over, it resets the clock for a period of time. I believe when it changes hands, there's I don't know if it's a 6 month or a 1 year period of time. So in 2009, when Ms. Strong purchased it, my understanding is that reset a clock. So what happened between 2006 and 2008, I can't tell you, but I know that there was considerable effort within the preservation community, which I'm a big part of, to not let this house go under the bulldozer. It is a significant property. So that's my understanding of the timeline. My question for Mr. Bailiff is, the numbers on the repairs, the estimated repairs, and the market value don't seem to be real world. At a $9,000 estimated repair and $109,000 market value, both of those numbers seem significantly off to me. What are they supposed to represent?
They're supposed to represent the value of the repairs as a fire in 2006 and what it would take to repair those items. The value is probably less because of the fire damage to it than the tax value. And usually when we have fire damage, we go to the real estate administrator and ask for an estimate at that point in time.
Okay, and then the formula for determining whether a building is eligible for demolition is some percentage of the market value.
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, it divides into two categories. If it's greater than 65%, then there is no period of time that it gets, so to speak. It doesn't have to meet the 6-month rule.
Okay.
We would bring that to you, and when the full city council's action took effect, then it would be as fast as we could serve the property owner with that ordinance to demolish. In the case of anything less than 65%, they have got to the point here of this committee by a period of at least 6 months following the repair order, and then they have another additional 90 days, and all of that's by ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions of Mr. Bailiff, I'd like to ask Ms. McCullough to come up and give us the HRC opinion on this, and also to explain the 365-day.
Would you like to start with the 365-day? Because I would like Jerry Contos.
Okay, Jerry,
help us
then
with
if
touch
you'd like
on
to
that.
do that. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Contos, hi.
I'll be brief, but I will be available, of course, for any follow-up questions. General Statute 168 443 3B allows a procedure whereby the Historic Resources Commission can hold a hearing, and if it determines that the property is of particular significance to the district, then it may recommend to the housing inspector that a 365-day delay in the demolition of the property pursuant to the procedures of 160A 400.14. In short, it allows for a recommendation to be made to the housing inspector. Of course, in this instance, the housing inspector is deferring to the committee to make the ultimate decision if the committee at this point, and then council would like to adhere to that recommendation or move forward with a demolition order.
Does this apply only to historic designated properties, or can it be, this 365 can be applied?
This is very specific to historic properties that are in historic districts that are underneath a minimum housing order. If it were an instance, even if it were in a historic district, that the property were condemned to be unsafe, then that provision would not apply. It only applies to minimum housing violations.
Okay, thank you. And at some point, yes, I'd like for someone to tell me the difference between unfit and unsafe. Thank you, Jerry.
Unsafe would be a subset of unfit. Unfit covers unsafe, unsanitary, and unhealthy conditions.
Okay, all right. And those unsafe conditions are not actually listed in our in the property description. only the unfit?
Unfit, and the unfit comes from the definition within the minimum housing code, which lists out the various sections. There are like 12 categories of unfit, unsanitary, and unhealthy conditions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brooks.
I would just like the committee to know that several years ago, we agreed to work with the planning department when we encounter historic properties, and notwithstanding the 365 days, when we prepare cases for demolition, we provide them with a list of the houses that we're presenting to council. And if they flag a house as having some type of historical significance, we have agreed to pull that property to allow them time to work with it prior to it being presented to you. Now, I don't know if that happened in this particular case, but that's an agreement that we have with them in order to try to allow them to work with owners of historic property to get them prepared, to get it repaired prior to presenting it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Okay. Ms. McCullough.
Thank you. I can give you some history about the house, just to kind of add on to the relationship that we built, to kind of define it, because I do see a concern that, willy-nilly any house that's old could come in here. We are now looking at houses that have some sort of official designation. That would be a local historic landmark, locally zoned properties, that would be in Old Salem, Bethabara, and West End, or that are National Register properties. And we do have a large number of National Register districts in Forsyth County and Winston-Salem. We're very proud of that fact. But what we want to do is make sure we bring you all the information so that you can make that determination, because we know and we have seen, especially in our older neighborhoods and our historic neighborhoods, if we start losing structures one by one, we lose history. And I do know that that's important to all of us. So we're kind of here just to put up a flag. In this case, this house is a contributing structure in the West End Historic Overlay District, one of those locally zoned districts. It is right on the edge of the district, and you can look at that as it's probably one of the more important ones, because that's where the definition of the district starts. This house was owned by the R.J. Reynolds family and sold to the Wright family, which it is the E. Wright Noble House, the Noble family. The design of it was based upon features that were of an older house. It is very important to the neighborhood significance and to Winston-Salem. To talk to you about the history of this particular situation and the longevity and how our relationship works, we worked with certain council people at that time that were in the neighborhood, certain groups, and what we try to do is we try to get those outside forces that are in preservation to save it, because to be honest, the city doesn't have the programming to fix old houses like this. That's not what we're here for, but there are groups out there that can help and support that. The owner, when the fire started, it was a rough go to try to get it out of one owner's hands and into another, because it was the financial crisis, countrywide was going under. It was amazing. So when we finally got it to be put on the market, a new owner showed up and agreed to fix it. We don't have a program with the Historic Resource Commission to follow those programs along. It's kind of thrown back into housing's hands to kind of monitor and whether they're doing that work. So it was brought to my attention several times by Mr. Bailiff saying, do I know of anything? And, I'd answer, no, I haven't seen any work. I did know some work was going on in the carriage house. And when I say carriage house, I mean the 2-story carriage house, and that there was someone living in there, but I hadn't seen any work to the major house. So unfortunately, it came to time that Bruce said, I'm going to bring it back, and we have to let it go. But what we did do is we did bring it to the HRC. I'm hoping to hear from the owners, because I think they're here today. And again, situations happen where people thought they were financially able to do something, and situations change. And I do think that's the scenario, but I'm not going to speak for them. And this request for 365 days is a hope to get it into an owner's hands that can fix this house and save this part of West End and this history of Winston-Salem.
Thank you, Michelle. Now, of the owners, who would like to speak? Ms. Strong, do you want to speak?
Unless Mr. Giroux would like to speak.
Okay, well, he'll certainly have a chance. If you will limit your words to 3 minutes, please, and if you would give your name and address for the record.
My name is Penny Strong, and the address is 66 West End Boulevard, Winston, 27101. I can see where it would appear that there hasn't been any work done, but what we had done actually was take all of the plaster off the walls and the electrical wiring and everything else. We've had those 3 buildings on the property. We've continued to work on all 3 of the buildings. We really didn't have the understanding that there was a time frame involved in this. But we have continued to work on the front of it. I've painted some. I've replaced some windows. We've taken down boards that were burned. We did have a structural engineer inspect the property, and he found the property to be safe. And so we have invested a lot of time and money. Mr. Giroux' health is not very good any longer, and it's something that we need to pull away from and push forward and get possibly an owner that can come through and, as Michelle said, take this property and do whatever needs to be done with it. The only thing that I can think of to say is that Charles Barton Keene, who was the architect for Renolda House, they think that he was the architect for this house on West End Boulevard. I have been contacted by 2 production companies asking if we could use it as a movie site. I have submitted the information to This Old House as a possible program for them. So there's a lot of interest generated by this house, and we would like to have 365 days to reconsider and move forward and try and continue to do the right thing with this property.
Mr. Giroux or Mr. Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. If you would give your name and address for the record and
Stanley Giroux, G-I-R-O-U-X.
Okay, and
16 Hooper Street, Westwood, New Jersey, 07675.
Okay. And if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Yes. When we started this project, none of the buildings were habitable. The police department, who I interfaced with, told me that there were 40 break-ins about a year into the property. So our first goal was to secure the garage building, which all the copper wiring that had been put in there originally had been stripped out and stolen, and just the circuit panel box was remaining. Penny at the time was living in Ashboro, so the primary thing was to get a building on site, so the Ashboro trip of 1 hour each way wouldn't be necessary, and there'd be somebody there. And then CPI was contacted to make some kind of security alarm system. And I'm in New Jersey, and I was coming down here 4 or 5 days a month, every 4 or 5 weeks. I have a consulting business and an equipment business in New Jersey, and actually had done business down here also. And we were proceeding with getting the 2 buildings completed, and then starting on the big house. And in 2009, I was rear-ended, and I sustained a back injury, which has gotten worse since then. In 2010, I checked myself into the local hospital in Westwood because my hands had swollen up, my legs had swollen up, and I was slurring my words, and I ended up in the hospital twice. And then in just this recent last November, the hospital is about 400 feet from my office. I walked in, and I actually had respiratory failure, and I spent 3.5 months, and I had to be resuscitated. At that point, being that the income, I was funding basically 95% of the money going into it, and the economy had hit my business like it hit a lot of other business, and being I wasn't there, everything went down. And so I was not able to, I exhausted all my liquid funds. And at that point, I said to Penny, the only way we can continue is we'll have to sell the property. And I met with Mr. Bailiff earlier, and I said that would be, we have the real estate agent here, that we would sell the property and contingent on the new owner bringing up the code. As you see, I'm 72 and I've got some health problems, and it's not conducive for me who kind of cannot ran out of money. When I was funding, there was no mortgage. I funded it out of my pocket. But going back to when we started with the project, I met with the building department. In my business, I do a lot of industrial. I'm a GC for a lot of in buildings and whatnot involved, industrial and body shops. And I know the drill. So I met with the building department and told them exactly what I was doing and what I was doing, that I was absentee, and they had my phone number and whatnot. And I would come down occasionally, and again, and as the only violation that I was aware of was, I have a copy of it, it's not with me, the town sent me a violation that there was debris out the curb. That was the only violation. The only other thing that I'm aware of was that the plumber who put the plumbing into the garage building did not bring up the pressure to test the pipes up to, I believe it's 195 PSI, had it a lot less, and the plumbing inspection failed. And as I recall, we got another plumber who brought the plumbing up to grade, and it passed inspection. And I mean, at this point, I believe it's productive to let us continue to put the property up for sale, and have the real estate gentleman with us here in the back room. In the back of the room, he's with Alan Tate, and get somebody that would take over the property and continue. We would like to see it culminated and to a finished project, even though we financially are not able to do it. And the physical stress on it, in my case, has been overwhelming.
That's understandable, Mr. Giroux. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I ask a question of staff at this point, and then we'll open it up to questions of anyone else. Am I correct in remembering that recently we adopted a change to the ordinance that code violations actually follow the property instead of a new owner? No?
What we do
instead of reset.
We have a process, a procedure that we've had. It's not necessarily in the minimum housing code, but on advice of council, we've been filing list pendants for some time, and that list pendants is public notification to anyone conducting a title search that the city of Winston-Salem has pending action and what that pending action is. The list pendants here in our records show that it was filed, it looks like March the 9th, 2006.
So, but if there were a new owner in this interim, they would have to comply by a 365-degree day delay order.
They would fall under the procedure and process we're under right now.
All right,
if you
thank
should
you.
grant that period, they would have 365 days.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember
That
Light.
was just for my clarification. Yes.
I would like to just add that that procedure has actually been, as it relates to minimum housing code, in the statute since 1995, and we've used it for some time. So when there's a transfer of property, basically the code violations and the orders follow that property.
I thought I remembered something like that. Okay. Question of any of the owners or the staff?
I'm late to the party here. Is the real estate agent here?
Yes, I am.
Can I ask a question, please? And I know I'm asking a biased question to a real estate agent, but how sellable is this property?
Pardon?
How sellable is this property in the condition it's in?
Oh,
yeah, we need your name and address.
Dan Olson with Alan Tate Builders here in Winston-Salem.
Basically, property, I mean, it kind of goes to price. So we haven't really sat down and did my comparable market analysis to see what price we're going to put on the property yet, but again, pretty much the location's good. So, so again, now it's just basically based on price. And from there, I think it's again, it's an historical area and convenient to Winston, and it has the history behind it. So it does have a lot of positives. So, would that answer your question?
You know the tax value?
I have it with me. There's some depreciation on there, so I really have to take a look at it.
That's fine.
About, I think it's right around 100,000, a little over 100,000.
Thank
you. I can get the tax record right now.
I've got it. Tax value, the dwelling value, or excuse me, the total value is $173,500. The dwelling value is $109,938, and there's miscellaneous improvements for $5,915, and the land value is $57,600.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the owners a question. So the business plan from here on out is to market the property? Okay. What happens to the business plan if the market value does not equal what you have invested in it so far?
Mr. Fry, Attorney Fry, or let Sandra answer that.
Okay. Does anybody have an estimate of what it would cost to complete the project going forward?
I'm thinking about $300,000, and from my understanding, the historic tax credit, did you want me to go stand there? It's my understanding that the historic tax credits are available to sell. So if it was going to cost $300,000 to do the repairs, we would get $150,000 worth of tax credits that we can sell. There are a lot of different directions we can go in this with your support. And basically that's what we're needing right now is the extension of time for your support. And then maybe some ideas about different ways to go to finance the situation.
Let me just clarify, you cannot sell those tax credits.
You cannot?
They're not for sale.
Okay.
If at a certain level, a project, you can syndicate and sell tax credits, but that's 40%. And at this level, since it's not an income-producing property,
okay,
that can't be accomplished with those.
One of the things that I wanted to say is there are 3 buildings on the property. It's about a half an acre, and there's the carriage house and the 6-car garage. The carriage house and the 6-car garage have basically been renovated completely. And the carriage house is rental property. It can be rental property. So that is income producing, if I might say.
Only if the main house is inhabited.
And
I understand it's been willingly and knowingly illegally used.
And to get those credits, and I've done these kinds of projects in the past myself, and to get those kind of credits, you have to ask permission. You have to show the state what you're going to do.
Right.
You have to approve it, and then you have to come back and show them what you did. So at this point, I don't think you're going to qualify for that, even if they are, whether it's income producing or non-income producing. So I don't think that's
possibly there are other grants and things that we could look into along at the same time that we're moving with the realtor and listing the property.
Okay, I'm still curious about what the plan would be if the market value does not equal what you have in it, because I'm in the real estate business, and
I would imagine what we would have to do is face that reality if that were to occur, and basically move forward and deal with our losses.
Thank you, Ms. Strong. Judy.
Yes, I want everyone to understand something for me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no issue with saving the property. But the property has been there for what now going on, if we give the other 365, Madam Chair, that's 9 years now. And I'm wondering what is the perception or perspective of the community, the neighborhood? Because if something stayed in my neighborhood for 1 year, I'm wanting somebody to do something. And I don't know, again, where in the process do historical properties get a pass that they can sit in a neighborhood for 9 years without anything being done to it, even though there was a fire, and there's now we're probably talking about 2-3 owners, Councilmember McIntosh. And to the gentleman, when properties are left vacant and abandoned, the appearance to the individuals driving by or walking by, then you're probably going to get some vandalism. If the building is not secure and locked, whereas the windows, can't be knocked out, the doors can't be knocked down, you're going to lose copper pipes, you're going to lose electrical pieces, you're going to lose valuable things that these people know the value of probably more historic things than we do. But again, my concern is that we're talking 9 years, and to Councilmember McIntosh's questions, 9 years has proved, unfortunately, nothing's really happened. How many more years and how much more does this community have to stand? And if the community isn't raising the flag to make us do something, then I don't know what a neighborhood association people are, and do they know what's going on? I'm sure after the article Sunday they do, but that's my concern, Mr. Garrity, is, 9 years? Really?
It's actually been 5 years since Mr. Giroux and I had the property, and we have done substantial amount of repair inside and outside. We have been working on the outside, the exterior fascia, and many, many neighbors have come over and thanked us for trying to make it look better. It no longer has the boards on it on the exterior. We put the boards on it on the interior so that it would give a general appearance of not being so unattractive. We planted shrubs and tulips and things like that and maintained the yard. So we've done a lot there that maybe is not as visible to someone that doesn't understand the history of what's been going on.
Thank you, Ms. Strong.
Oh, I just also wanted to speak to the subject of safety. As Mr. Giroux stated, I went to the police department in 2010 or 11. They gave me information dating back to 2006. There were 40 calls a year there, and if you consider the possibility that there were 2 police officers on each one of those calls, that's a considerable, losing my ability to speak too dry, that's a considerable savings to the city, and it has not been unsafe. We have dogs on the property, we have a burglar alarm on the property, there's a caretaker on the property, I'm on the property. We walk that property every single day and are always looking for safety issues.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Did you have something to say?
I have a question and then a comment. Question is to Mr. Bailiff. When this property was secured by the new owners in 2005, if they had invested the money that they've invested into the other parts of the property in addressing the specific violations, that would have brought this property out of violation, correct? Yes. But instead, they took care of other things on the property and not specifically the violations on the property.
That is correct.
And so that's one, because I think there's money being invested, but it was invested in the wrong place. My comment then goes to the fact, and again, I would yield to the council member of the area to say that whatever the neighborhood in there is, because again, to me, I understand historic properties, and I think we have a responsibility to find ways to preserve history as best we can. But no neighborhood should be subjected for 10 years of a property that appears to be dilapidated, no matter what you can see on the inside not being done, but for 10 years, regardless of who's owned it, for 10 years nearly, the property has been a nuisance in many different areas to the neighborhood. And again, if that neighborhood is willing to deal with the continued nuisance, then I think that's something to take a look at. But if the neighborhood itself has a desire to see something change there, then I think this community and the council as a whole has a responsibility to look at that. I know that in areas of my community where we see things like this, just got a long email today about properties and that have consistently been issued. And neighbors don't like to see that. Even though there's good intent by individuals who own the property to see something happen to it, neighbors just don't want to wake up every day and look at a property that's a nuisance, no matter how hard you're trying to fix it, no matter how hard you're trying to take care of it, and no matter those extreme things that happen in people's life that we have no control over that happens. We all understand that, but 10 years is a long time for that. And I didn't ask any questions, so I don't need a response.
No, you don't? If you look at it, wait. Mr. McIntosh.
I want to go to that specifically, and it's a very good point. And I want to draw a parallel with another property, and that's 934 West 5th Street, which had been in violation for 8 years, 7 or 8 years. Continually threatened with being torn down. The owner would do a certain number of things, would bring it back up barely into compliance, and the complaints would continue. At some point, the clock ran out on him. The city was going to tear it down. I was approached and said, if you could if you can purchase this house by the end of the week, you can buy it, but you have to take on all the things that are all the faults with it, and you have to have it back up in compliance in a year. And so we did that. And I think the similar thing there is that the community, the direct community, the historic community, and the neighbors were willing to put up with the problems that come along with a derelict house versus losing that house forever. And I know that the property next door to 66 West End Boulevard is 72 West End Boulevard. The two principals of my real estate firm, Michael Ryden and Greg White, purchased that property and converted it to condominiums, and really felt like they were very negatively impacted by the condition of this, but they still did the deal, and it worked out. But even they, Michael's now the head of the Historic Resource Commission, even they have told me that they would really not like to see his house demolished. They would like to see it fixed, but not demolished. I think the sense in the community is that this is such an incredibly valuable house, it's so much part of the fabric of Winston-Salem, they would be ashamed to lose it. Nobody's happy that it's been out there this long, but I think the immediate neighbors and the West End group in general would overwhelmingly say, let's keep this house. Let's give some more time. Let's find a solution. Let's maybe offer some technical expertise. I don't think anybody's willing to throw any money at it, but I think there's a lot of support to keep the building from being raised.
Then will you make a motion about the extension that's been requested?
I would move to echo the Historic Resource Commission and grant a 365-day extension.
A second?
Second.
Any comments?
Briefly, I think Councilmember Adams was wondering why I didn't have any questions. Basically, I was waiting to hear what the neighborhood thought. It's a situation where this appears to be a unique property, but it has a long history of ill repair. And to me, the decisive point in tipping the balance was, did the neighbors want to give it another try and keep the resource, or was the neighborhood so fed up they were saying we can't save it? And what I'm hearing from the council member representing the neighborhood is that the neighbors still want to give it a shot and think that there's a realistic chance to save it. So I'm willing to support the motion under those circumstances.
Thank you. Therefore, yes.
And I know things can change, Madam Chair, in 365 days. But again, I think this council needs to understand, and working with our staff and the city manager, we need to be consistent. That's what I keep pressing on my peers. We have to be consistent. So we need to look at any other properties and situations where we are giving this unlimited time clock to. We just keep flipping it and let the sand run and flipping it. And for those that don't understand, I understand. But we have a responsibility to the citizens of Winston-Salem to be consistent. And all I'm saying is that'll be 10 years when the time runs out. So do we, we just need to look at our processes and our policies as to how we do this, Mr. Garrity, and how we move forward with this. Because if this is going to be the way that we're going to operate, then we better get ready for other places in the city that say, even though the walls are falling in, this is a historical piece of property, and I want you to just keep letting me keep trying. There comes a point where you got to stop. Okay, you got to stop. If we don't stop, we'll keep doing this over and over again. That's all.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor of granting a 365-day delay?
Aye.
Aye.
Done. Thank you all. This has taken a while, but I'm glad that we have sorted this out. Thank you. Okay, next is 820 Ferndale C2B. Mr. Bessie, you had wanted this?
Yes, and I can be brief. I think I was just looking down the list of the code violations and seeing those that had been complied and those that remained, and my impression was that a substantial amount had been done, that it was out of that category of hopeless. And the only thing that I was going to suggest is that we approve a resolution to repair or demolish, as opposed to mandate that it be demolished. And if they get the rest of it done, then, you know, it looks like it's salvageable.
Yeah, that does look like that. Mr. Bailiff, when was it last checked to see that the first part of the column of deficiencies have been actually completed?
I met with the property owner last month. This is a carryover from February. The property owner had mentioned that he had a conflict medical appointment, in which case he could not make the meeting, and so the committee carried it over to this month. At the time, I asked the property owner for interior access because some of these violations are on the interior, and I was denied access at the time, and I've not had any communication with him since then to verify whether there has been compliance or not. His indication, although it may be hearsay to you, his indication to me is that the repairs had not been completed. And I explained to him that I'd like to be able to get in to document that, to update our records, and I've not been allowed access at this time.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions?
I'd move approval with the one amendment, repaired or demolished.
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's repair or demolish then. Okay. And then we have C9. Who asked for that? Okay. All right.
Presentation on city slogan.
Okay.
You look like you're
Oh,
running.
boy.
Chairman
We could
Light.
make up all sorts of good things here.
All right.
Okay.
Chairman and members of the committee, a few months ago, an item came to you from Department of Transportation that talked about placing new signs on the major roadways leading into the city. At the bottom of these signs, under the city name and logo, there would be a slogan. And so there was discussion about what that slogan should be. We can look all throughout the community, and you can see where different people have grabbed onto different things. You'll see Camel City, you'll see Twin City, and most recently here in the last few years, you've heard the City of Arts and Innovation. And prior to that, it was even City of the Arts. And so our direction from city manager was to begin an effort to go out and hear what the community has to say. And so what we've put together is a plan to, through advertising in print, television, and digital media, asking our community to tell us what they believe the slogan should be for the city of Winston-Salem. We wouldn't give any type of lead information. We wouldn't ask them if Twin City is the name, or Camel City, or Arts or Innovation. It solely is asking them in an open way to offer suggestions. They would leave those suggestions by calling the citizen feedback line 734-1400, or they'd go to our website and they'd submit on a form what they believe that slogan should be. What we'd like to do is to have the approval to move forward with that plan March 31st through April 4th, and collect that opinion from the community and process those numbers out, and then bring back a recommendation as well as the information for you.
And March 31st through April 4th?
It's the first week of April.
Okay, so, and that's adequate time.
We think that it's, when you're doing an item like this, it's best to only leave it out there for a week. We can target our marketing to get people to respond within that time. If it matters to them, they can make a comment within a week.
Okay, all right, okay. Any other questions?
Well, just in looking at the item, just wondering if there's some opportunity for us, and I know we're wanting to get that broad input from others, but just looking at some who work to market the community in those ways, to include them in that process of getting the word out to their constituencies who have a large road, like Visit Winston-Salem or Winston-Salem Business Inc., or those kind of individuals who have a job of trying to market the city, and they have constituencies who want to make sure that we include them directly in being able to get some feedback.
Yes, sir. We can utilize that. There are numerous relationships around that we can go back to and help us to arrive at an answer.
What is the pleasure of the council?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We can get to the general agenda.
Item G1, resolution adopting the City Council's 2014 legislative priorities.
I believe that everyone here heard this from the meetings yesterday, except for Dan, if I'm not mistaken.
It was on the consent, it was not discussed.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay.
And I need to provide an update if I might.
Okay, if you will, please.
Basically, it's the same package that was reviewed by the committee last month. You may recall I mentioned revising the resolution relating to privilege licenses. If you'll look back behind the finance tab to C13, if you look at pages 233 and 235, you'll find the both the February version of the resolution and then the March version called revised version.
Okay.
I'll wait till you get to that. One out. Pages 233 and 235. Seat behind seat 13.
You got to find it. Look.
Got me. Which is?
You see it?
Oh.
Okay. It says revised version at the top. That's the new version of the resolution. And then you have the February version. And basically, you'll see that the differences are as follows. If you look at the March version, called revised version, I have basically looked at the legislation that's being considered by the Revenue Laws Committee and the impact that's been projected for the city of Winston-Salem, which at the time of this resolution, it was anticipated that we would lose about $2.1 million in revenues. So I looked at that potential impact, added that impact to the fact that the hold harmless has been, payments have been eliminated, and then we've lost the software tax. So when you add those together, you're talking basically about a 2.5 cents increase on the ad valorem property taxes. And I thought that might be relevant and more important than the general standard resolution that's used in the past. So I would recommend this resolution over the February one.
Okay.
Was it
So the
everybody-
total adds up to
4.7.
nearly $5 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Is everybody able to find the resolution in the book?
Did you? Okay. Are there questions for Ms. Carmen?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I have a question on another area
Okay.
at the appropriate time.
Go right ahead.
I inadvertently pulled the wrong item yesterday, and I just wanted to comment on this. One of the items in here we're asking our legislatures to give us a permission for us to, is for people to attend meetings electronically. And I happen to sit on another board that does do that, and it does not work well. Now, ours is simply audio, not visual. But I just kind of think folks need to be at the meeting so that you can fully participate. And it's my experience that if you remotely, and this I think would be video and audio, is that correct?
The preferred method would be video and audio. It does allow just for audio, but based upon the technology we're looking at, our recommendation would be when you do your rules of procedure, should this pass, that you require both visual and audio.
Okay. But anyway, and I realize we're in a new world as far as technology, but if you're not there in person, it's hard to participate in the give and take of a meeting. And particularly if it's only audio, when you simply have a speaker, you don't know if the person wants to say something or not. It's kind of hard to raise your hand that way. But I'm not objecting to it. I'm simply saying my experience in that area is that it is less than satisfactory way to participate in the meeting.
Ms. Carmen, would you like to explain the pros of having this?
This was a request, I think, of a couple of council members who just want to bring, I guess, our meetings up to date based upon the technology. And I guess an example of where this could have been used is, I guess, last week when we had several council members at the National League of Cities meeting in D.C. We could have had, I guess, a council meeting at that time had this legislation passed, and we were able to have the technology in place, as I've indicated, both the visual and the audio, where we could have the meeting with those council members in D.C. participating remotely. Again, the audio and video are preferred because that way you can actually see the council member as well as hear the council member and know what the council member is actually saying and capture the additional information that comes through body language and so forth, and be assured of the vote the way the council member is voting. So that's why that's preferred.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, David.
I was just looking over the draft legislation, and it does not immediately strike me as clear what the current law is. If the current law was represented by the provisions that are struck through, do we presently have the authority to hold electronic meetings?
The School of Government has indicated over the years it's not actually clear that we have that authority. You'll see in the definition of official meetings it has electronic and via telephone conference, but it's not clear that you actually can do it. And it's also questionable as to whether or not you can vote during that process, in particular on matters that are controversial or likely to be challenged. And so the School of Government has indicated if you really want to be able to vote on matters that might likely be challenged and be assured that it's appropriate and authorized, that the best thing to do is to go get authority from the General Assembly. There are other municipalities that have a scaled down or dialed back version of this. It's my understanding in Charlotte, they use this process for committees. They don't use it for the full city council. At least that's what their website seems to indicate. So there are other municipalities using this for maybe discussion purposes, not necessarily taking votes. But if you want the full-blown authority and want to be assured that it's not going to be challenged successfully, School of Government has recommended going to do it.
I guess this is one of those instances where I share Councilmember Clark's opinion. I'm not really confident.
But in a few instances.
More than we like to admit, actually. This is a case where I'm not sure it's a good thing to move to electronic meetings. They're just not as satisfactory as in person in terms of the quality of participation. But, yeah.
I would like to note for the record, and again, it's up to council to decide, but I did exclude from electronic meetings or remote participation quasi-judicial proceedings,
Right.
and then closed sessions unless
Right.
it's for an emergency. So there are some exclusions. Sure.
Just a comment on this item, particularly one I think in terms of use of it. I think this council over several different teams of individuals have seen where there have been extended periods of time where people have had illnesses, which they were not able to participate in even some of the dialogue that took place, and not just talking about the vote, but even the dialogue, which I think even though they had desire to and were able to communicate with others, there's even a difference of even just having via virtually that presence, I think, makes a difference in terms of conversation rather than just a written note or some statement of a position on an item. So I think there's opportunity for it to be. I don't envision in the next few years, but maybe 30 years, 30, 40 years, that we're just going to have monitors on the wall and that's just going to be the meeting. I think that truly takes away from the process. But again, as technology advances, I think there's opportunity for us to integrate that to an extent, but not to a place where it takes away from the process. And I don't think that the ways in which we're looking at this will detract greatly from that, but I think would offer the opportunity for some type of continuity if there is some real reason for individuals to be away.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Montgomery that the world as we know it has changed, and if you are or not corporate America, that's standard for the way it operates. You sit in a room and there's a monitor on the wall, flat screen, and you might be talking to people in Milwaukee, California, and Florida all at the same time, and everybody can see each other and hear each other. And the facilitator of the meeting, there is order. You have an agenda and all of that. But to his point, as things change, and as he said, when people become sick, like I watched you guys on television, but I wanted to chime in, you know, I wanted to be a part of it. And I think that we can have order just like we do with everything else, how we ask citizens to come up and speak, or representatives or our staff. I think there can be a period in there with each resolution, not taking up any more time than if I were there. Does the council member X want to say anything to that? Or have where we can, I don't know, some kind of electronic signal or something to let you know that I would like to say something, and make sure that we understand. Again, we have 1 minute, 90 seconds to express whatever, to at least start, keep the meeting going. But I do believe with the world as we know it is changing, I think we need to start integrating some of this technology into our processes. And I don't think we need to be the last ones to do it. I think we do need to do something. And we can even put in our policies even more stringent when we use this, you know, but I think we need to do that.
Yeah, I hadn't been thinking of the illness situation, which I think is a legitimate use. You know, the opportunity to participate by remote is better than not having the opportunity at all. I would start to worry if folks started to do it as a convenience. And I serve on different national boards for organizations, and we meet by conference call regularly, and because we have people in different states, we have people across the country, and it's the only way to do it. You just can't physically get together. You know, a local board like ours is not a similar situation, and I'd personally not. I'd worry if we started getting to the use of this as a convenience as opposed to a stopgap in those situations where we had somebody who was in the hospital or ill. They were well enough to participate, just not well enough to be physically there. I entirely agree that that's a useful exception.
Similar to the discussion last night about the police wearing the body cameras, I think there's a lot of policy that goes around this other than what we're seeing on a piece of paper. I do agree that when it does allow for participation when people otherwise can't be there, I don't think it should be a convenience factor. I think we have the technology to do it, but I do think we need to be very careful about what our policies are about what constitutes being able to use it and not able to use it. I think it's a good deal, but I think we have to be really careful.
Mr. City Manager.
And the technology we're looking at, it would be picture-in-picture technology, so that the viewing audience, all the council members in the meeting, as well as those that are remote, could see each other. So you could see the other person talking, and you'd see the council. You see the council as a whole, and then you see the smaller picture-in-picture with the council members remote. We're also looking at the same technology would allow for whether you're at the meeting in person with your iPad or in another location. When you want to be recognized, you better hit a button and it shows up on the mayor's screen so he knows to recognize whoever's asked to be done. I think Councilman McIntosh is right, and others, that you would need to pass some policy, probably limit the number of people, because you need to have a physical meeting where the majority, I think, are still physically here. Also, I think some decorum rules on where somebody from remotely is signing in, so that it just works well.
You're not at the bar.
We want you dressed.
Well, and not
in your pajamas.
And not in a public place where there's a lot of noise and distraction that won't work.
Not in a bar.
Not in a bar, yeah.
If you look at A, it does contemplate, if this passes the General Assembly, council coming back and enacting procedures in place.
Yeah, that I think would be valuable. But this would just simply give us the legislative power to do that. All right. Do I have any other questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the committee?
I move approval of the resolutions, including the revised version on the revenues issue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. Number 2.
Ordinance amending Chapter A and Chapter B of the Unified Development Ordinances to define
Go ahead, finish.
and add specific conditions for the use solar farms within the conditions for utilities, UDO 248, proposal of Planning and Development Services staff, recommended by Planning Board.
Thank you. All right. David, you're going to do this?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'll run through a quick slideshow here. And the petitioner of this amendment is the Planning and Development Services staff, and it's basically an amendment to deal with the use solar farms. There's been a rapid increase in solar energy development in the state, and the creation of solar farms in other counties has led to concerns, which we've read about in the newspapers. Sorry. So far, I've read everything on there. Laptop. There we go. A stakeholder group developed a template solar energy development ordinance last fall, and we drew from that as we were developing this ordinance. Pulled some photos of solar panels off the internet. This is simply to show that they don't create a lot of impervious area. And this slide I used to show that if these changes to the regulations are adopted, you see a small driveway on the right-hand side of the picture. If that were a public right-of-way, there would be a buffer required along there and a 40-foot setback under the proposed regulations. And then this last slide I have just shows the potential magnitude of these farms, however, less likely to happen in the city, within the city limits than in the county and where land's, cheaper. So right now, solar farm is not defined in the ordinance. It's classified as a utility in the UDO, which is another utility, might be a substation for electrical power. So this would create its own definition, but still within the category of utility. Right now, under utility, there's adequate setback requirements of 40 foot, which actually that template ordinance has a sliding scale, and ours is actually already more restrictive than the template ordinance. And we do recommend additional conditions for the planting of an evergreen screen similar to our outdoor storage screening requirements, which is more of a screen than any of our buffer yards, and then also requirements for the termination of use. If they're abandoned within a year, they'd be asked to be completely removed from the property. This shows that screen. Well, actually, get back to this. Let's go back. Go through these. This is just a graphic of the screen we would be recommending, and these the 6-foot minimum height is at planting. They would grow from there, and then the 5-foot spacing would fill in over time to have a significant screening effect along the property line against residentially zoned properties. I went to the Planning Board on January 9th. There was no opposition. The Planning Board recommended approval. It's also already been to the County Commissioners, and they approved it with some amendments. They approved it with some changes to the screening option rather than the one approved by the Planning Board. They also had some options for allowing, if there's a certain width of natural vegetation to be left in place, that could count if it was wide enough and thick enough, if trees had overlapping drip lines. They also had a third possibility that is probably more useful in the county area, where there could be some harvesting of trees. This is all created by the county commissioners themselves, added that to the amendment. But the Planning Board recommended the original version with this screening. So I'd be glad to try and answer any questions you have.
I'll ask one question. The Planning Board's version could, in fact, be 40 feet of hardwood trees that would not actually, through half the year, do anything real screening?
Right. The version with the wider screen of natural vegetation with the overlapping drip line, there's periods in the winters where it may be able to see through it, but I guess the point is the advantage is you get to maintain that natural area. And so it's sort of a trade-off. You see through the trees, but you're not like staring at the solar panels. So it is a trade-off.
But that's not on the planning board. The planning board version is only for the evergreen plants.
Oh, okay. One of the versions at any rate. Yeah. Okay. Are there questions? Yes.
I noticed in here that you said that the pace of solar farms is growing very rapidly. I guess even in North Carolina. But do we have a farm somewhere near here that staff is aware of?
There is a farm in Davidson County, a fairly large one we're aware of, and we've heard that people have been interested in going to the state for the first steps of looking at one in this county, but there aren't any in our county yet.
Could you kind of tell me, do you know how much acreage we're talking about, possibly, in Davidson?
I do not know that. I'll look that up for you.
Thank you.
Is there any distinction based on the size of the solar farm? Is a minimum?
What we did, we try to have this sort of a minimal, just to make sure that what we were reading in the newspaper articles about concerns in other communities were addressed, and it's really the visual buffer. So we didn't try and say one size gets a different buffer or anything. What we basically recommend is that it's defined as ground-mounted on an acre or more. And so that doesn't catch anything on the roof. We don't want to change the rules for roof-mounted. It also doesn't catch if someone has one in their side yard for their house. It's not suddenly a solar farm.
Well, that was my question. What is it, how much area does it take to power your house? I don't know.
And also, even though we say 1 acre, it wouldn't capture a house on a 5-acre lot because that would be considered an accessory use to the house. So you won't get caught up in this just because you have one house on 5 acres and you're over an acre. It wouldn't be interpreted that way.
So this is basically into commercial operation?
Correct.
David, if you could go back to one of your first slides that showed a picture of a solar farm.
There's that one. Is it one of the other ones?
It was a broader view, Dan.
Yeah, here's another shot, and then there was a much large. The third slide is a larger one.
Okay. That looks as if there are no appurtenant structures or big heavy cables or anything like that that are visible with this. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Right. There's typically not that kind of tall structures, and the height requirement of the underlying zone would still be in effect. Like the residential zones are a 40-foot height requirement generally.
What infrastructure is required to tie into the grid? I mean, you have to have some sort of a base station like you do on a cell tower in order to connect?
Right. Yeah, it would be similar to cell tower technology, but actually I will have to check on that as well. So
it would be, I'm sorry.
There is you would need some sort of a structure to bring all the cables together and then go out.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, and that's what I was concerned about, that there's nothing in here about keeping that sort of structure away from neighboring residential.
Well, I guess like now with the substation, if the utility is considered to have any kind of hazardous effects of any kind, there's automatically a 40-foot setback, which would apply here as well. And then in those cases, a buffer yard, but in this case, it'd be actually a screening. So anything having to do with this would have to be behind that screening and 40 feet from the property line.
Okay, all right. Okay. Questions? Yes, Robert.
Comment, we make it hard enough, we won't have any. I can think of a lot worse neighbors than something that doesn't make any noise and just sits there. I'm failing to see the controversy. I mean, maybe they're not the prettiest things in the world, but they're quiet. they don't have a carbon footprint, all those type things. I'm even concerned if the trees are too tall, then the sun doesn't get to them. I mean, I guess you could put it on the outside of the 40-foot buffer versus the inside. Could you?
Yeah, as long as you have 40 feet setback of any of the facilities, then the buffer you could be farther away than that.
Okay. You know what I'm saying? If you got a 40-foot buffer, you'd want the trees on the outside of the buffer, not the inside, because then you'd have another 30, 40 feet of shade or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I see.
I did just learn that the Davidson County farm is 200 acres in size.
Yeah.
So it's pretty big. We actually purposely did not try and have very stringent regulations here. What we were seeing in the newspaper articles in other communities is it came down to visual impacts, neighbors, people feeling it was impacting them. We had the same idea. It's like that land could be a pig farm. Instead, it's solar panels. It seems better, but it's different. It's new and it's different. It's not what you're used to seeing in the country if you live there. So we purposely, the template ordinance has a lot of regulations they propose as possibilities for communities to have. We looked at what we have for utilities, and we tweaked it a little bit. So
I could put a landfill on 200 acres. I mean, as I said, I think you could have a lot worse neighbors than this. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Just comments. I agree. These are not facilities that I would find objectionable neighbors. And this is a case in which I think that the commissioners took a reasonable proposal and added a reasonable alternative compliance provision. It's a trade-off between sightline screening and the value of the width of natural hardwoods. Personally, as a neighbor, I'd pick the natural hardwood. So I would be prepared to offer a motion recommending the version adopted by the commission.
Second. If I could interject, when as we work with commissioners, we thought the C1 in their option, I believe that's how it's laid out on what you have, which is that 40-foot buffer undisturbed area, was something that we already could easily enforce. And C2, which includes the sequentially planted forestry management part, would be a little bit harder for staff to manage that and keep track of that. But we also like the C1 option rather than just a strict row. So I guess that's an option for you all to either the planning board version, both C1 and C2, or just C1.
Would you?
I'm happy with the motion as on the table. We can look further at that between now and the council meeting, consider whether we want to drop C2.
Okay. All right. You've made the motion and you've seconded it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. We have okay. We can do this in a few minutes if Dan doesn't mind us running over a little bit, and then we will address your thing in just a minute. Yes.
Item G3, review of responses to questions concerning public notifications that arose with UDO 242.
Good evening, council members. I can do this very quickly because there's no action that's being proposed, and this is just a report to you. And what we were asked to report, if you recall from the discussion last fall when some folks from Meadowlark Drive had talked about notifications and signs and things like that, we were asked to report on cost of notifications. We were asked to identify ways to improve notifications, including sign size. And then, in addition, we went on to survey the other large municipalities in the state in terms of their practices. So let me just quickly go through that with you. In terms of cost, the last full fiscal year, 2012-13, our costs for legal advertising, as those legal ads in the paper that we run for each zoning case, $2,900 for the year. The cost for letter notification in 2012-13 was $2,580, which represented a 3.5 times increase from the previous method. If you'll recall, your policy used to be just sending letter notifications to adjacent properties. You extended in 2010 the radius to 500 feet. That, in essence, has increased the cost of sending letter notifications by about 3.5 times. So that was our cost in the last full fiscal year. And just as a reminder, that cost is repeated again by the city secretary's office when they do the notifications all over again for the city council public hearings. These are our costs for the planning board. So it gets repeated again. So it is a city cost. Second thing was ways to improve notifications. And in your memo, we outlined a number of different possibilities. Certainly, increasing the mail notification to a larger radius than 500 feet is a possibility, but just as a warning, as that radius increases, the amount of land area increases dramatically. So your cost is going to go up, and if you wanted to go down that path, I would suggest that you're going to need to review the fee structure again, because that will be a significant cost increase. Secondly, more publicity about the rezoning's webpage. A lot of people don't know to look on the web page and find all the cases that are coming up, as well as the staff reports. I think there could be an increased effort through a variety of means to get the word out to the public about the rezoning web page. Another possibility is each of you has a community assistance liaison, and you could see if they could get involved in helping their neighborhood contacts on their list that they have know about zoning cases that are coming up in those areas. A fourth thing was increasing the signage, and we actually have done that since then. The sign size has increased by 50% beyond what it was there. You see in your memo a kind of a before and after example there. And then finally, required community meetings by the petitioner. You all considered that in 2010, and you decided at that time not to make that requirement there. You remember a representative of the development community explained some of the impracticalities of that in applying that in all cases like that. So we then did a survey of the 10 largest municipalities in North Carolina. In terms of the mail notification radius, we have the second largest mail notification, just slightly behind Durham. In terms of sign size, we are now the largest in the state. Plus, nobody else puts in directional signs like we do that are on other street frontages around the area. Notices on the website, everybody except Durham does that. Staff reports on the website, everybody except Fayetteville does that. Neighborhood organization notifications, specific notifications to known neighborhood contacts. 3 of the communities do that. 7 of them do not do that. And then requirement for neighborhood meetings by the petitioners. 4 of the communities require that for all rezonings. 3 of the communities require that only for special use rezonings when the specifics can be discussed. Keeping in mind general use, you can't talk specifics. And then 3 communities, including ours, do not require neighborhood meetings but do encourage them. So that's really our report there, and it's up to the council as to whether you want to do anything or nothing, keep things as they are, but we just wanted to provide that information to you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about this? Yes.
Just very briefly, I think the neighborhood association involvement through the community assistance liaison contact is probably the best bet for really an effective expansion of notice.
Accessing the website, the first page of the website is pretty busy. And after reading this, I went through and said, okay, how do I find this? And I eventually found it. There's a lot of info on there, so I think it's pretty easy for the general public to get confused and give up on it. So thinking about a way to make that easier would be. I know we just redid the website.
Right. We have that red and white Z icon, so hopefully we can get that on there so that people can pretty quickly, click on that if they see a Z sign, and then that goes straight to the zoning page.
Yes.
I was going to say, because this was the metal work happened to be in my ward, I think the biggest thing that could have helped there was the larger signs.
Yeah.
You could have doubled it from 500 to 1,000 feet. You still wouldn't have caught the neighborhoods in question. They are over almost a mile away. But there was nothing but trees and deer in between. So I certainly think the larger sign would be most beneficial. And I like the idea of the neighborhood groups. I'm trying to think if all those neighborhoods had organized groups. They did after the fact, but I'm not sure they had them before the fact.
Well, that's usually the case. The other thing about requiring meetings, part of me still thinks that's a good idea, but I've just talked to a developer in the South Ward who sent out all sorts of mailings to the neighbors. No one showed up, so, you know, it may be a thankless thing, so, at any rate, yeah.
I think it's important that you let a petitioner know that we value that, and we place a lot of weight on at least the effort to reach out, so that they know that they should do that, but if they choose not to, that's a strike against them.
And let me just let you know for the record, the staff always counsels petitioners to please have a neighborhood meeting. We encourage you to do that. It is stated actually in bold on our application form that we encourage them to do that, and we state it in our staff report whether they did have one or not. So hopefully there's enough encouragement there that most of them would do it. So.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm going to hold you for just a minute, 3 minutes more. It seems that I'll get there. Mr. Phillips, is that right? That who's the owner of the Ferndale property, had wanted to speak to us and missed his opportunity. We voted to repair. Yeah.
Madam Chair, the original recommendation in the package was ordered for demolishment. I had asked that this be pulled for consideration since I had noticed that a lot of the repairs mandated had been complied with. There were still a number of unfits, but it seemed enough to pull it out of the category of just knock it down into the category of provide a chance to repair. And so the motion approved by the committee on my recommendation was that it be ordered to be repaired or demolished within 90 days. So unless the gentleman wants to argue that that the opportunity to repair within 90 days is not enough, you know.
Well, that's my question to the committee. Would you grant 3 minutes to hear? If you'd like to come forward and speak to this, you understand that the committee voted to give you 90 days to finish the repairs? Okay. Come ahead and speak to us. You have 3 minutes. And your name and address, please.
I hate to take any more of your time, but I won't maybe in a minute. That was talked about, bulldozing my house. I've decided to give up on it. I'm going to let you bulldoze it if that's what you have to do. But I would like to state my case just a little bit. That's part of my home. I live behind it, on the house on the next street. And I got married in 1957. I moved to Winston-Salem at this house in 1957. I lived there all these years. I paid taxes. Spent thousands of dollars on both the houses. And I struggled. I bought this house 33 years ago. And I didn't buy it to rent it. I didn't buy it to all my own use, enjoy my property. However, I have used it to put personals in. And I took care of the property. The property looks much better than what it shows up like that. And I don't want to tear it down, but if necessary, I will. I got married in 1957, moved to South Weston on this property, been there 65 years. And I'm part of the neighborhood. I helped with the church, attended the church. My sons went to Easton School. They went to local high school, middle school, got awards from the state. I've been, I think, a good citizen of this community, and I cannot understand why. It took me time. The house looked so bad when I bought it in 1981. I've been working on it ever since. I only lived one night in it. Didn't buy it to live in, didn't buy it to rent. I bought it for part of my property. And I cannot understand why I can't be allowed some more time. You know, the house looks good outside. It needs a little inside work. I got great plans for the house. I'll put new reflective windows in it. And we'll put heat pump and all these things. But it takes time. It takes money. I've retired. My sole income now is Social Security. So I don't have money one of these lowers on the house. But I like the house. I like the neighborhood. And I got along with all my neighbors over the years. Mr. Robert Dick is a very good friend of mine. And he's protected my house over the years till he died. But since he's died, and they won't get pulled up. And I've decided I won't pull up. If they won't do it, it's going to get pulled up.
Well,
along with all the day on the day in it, because I don't have anywhere to put the table, I'm going to have to leave them there. And when you bulldoze it, you're going to bulldoze thousands of personal property, personal funds. So, I need more time.
Yeah. Well, and
I've had 2 bylaws since it's been about, and since I bought the house 33 years ago. And I've kept the house up, it looks good. Keep the yards mowed, keep the grass mowed, bushes mowed, get along with the neighborhoods. And I cannot for the life of me had such a credit to the neighborhood the house is. The fact is, I built 15 of the houses on that street. And I know what the houses are like in the neighborhood. They're good little houses, but this is a charming little house right here. And it's a credit to the neighborhood. I take very good care of it. I mean, I know I need some more coming. I need more time.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to fix the house for me and my wife to live in our old age. I want to make it good here. I want to take some weather there. Whatever is necessary, I won't do it. But I can't. And I'm going to give up.
Mr. Phillips, you have, in fact, according to this, done a lot of work on the house.
Thousands on this in my home. Thousands of dollars. Paid taxes all these years.
Okay, thank you.
What city will think of? Just turn the house down.
Thank you. That's okay. Mr. Bessie,
Just one other thing, Mr. Phillips. The committee isn't asking to bulldoze your house. We're just asking that you complete a very limited list of repairs here, and 3 months to do it.
I don't need all the work. It needs light switches and sinks and things like that. It don't need all this work, but I'm going to do more work. I'm going to make a model for the community. I know all the people in the community. I've knew them through the years.
okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bailiff, when was this inspected?
The original inspection occurred in December of 1993.
I bought the house in 1991. It was in bad shape when I bought it.
So this list of violations is from 93?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Mr. Phillips, in fact, says that you have done more of the repairs since 93.
I haven't done much research. But the house looks good. Two little fish
but it's unlivable as long as it has these violations. Thank you. Oh, okay.
Chairman Light, can we take a look at this property for possible in-rim repair?
Okay.
Which, under the in-rim repair process, if the cost of the repairs are less than the cost of the demolition, we would come in, do the repairs, put a lien on the property equal to the amount of the repairs that we've done on the property. So can we take a look at it?
Yes, if the committee,
I'm able to do my own work, you know, I don't need nobody.
but with the city's help, we may be able to save the house. That would be very good. If you will talk to Mr. Page and let him explain it to you. Okay.
And Councilmember Taylor
Yeah.
represents the area and has a comment.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, I was going to actually suggest the in-room repair program. I haven't heard a large groundswell of people wanting this house demolished right away. If Mr. Phillips is willing to make the repairs and work with the city, I'd ask the chair and the members of the committee to consider that.
Okay.
I don't think my neighbors would complain about the never complain.
Does the committee, would you like to change your,
The whole community out there, well.
Mr. Phillips, if you'll hang on just a second, Mr. Phillips. we're-
I think that I've deserved a little bit for taking care of my home.
And
And my
thank you.
home, I spent thousands of dollars.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips.
Thank you.
I would move to amend the motion to include an opportunity for in-rim repair as well.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, done. We'll see if we can
Thank you, sir.
work with you on that.
Get a 5 minutes.
Yeah, as soon as
There.
we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will come back with the Public Works Committee at 6:20.